Hey everybody, I'm taking a short drive up the canyon, and while I do so, I think I will record some of my thoughts on the division that is going on in the church, especially over the vaccination and the recommendation of August 12th from the First Presidency that basically everybody in the church should get vaccinated. And I happen to fall into the camp of no, I don't feel that I should. And I kind of want to explain my reasoning behind that and help those who are on the other side, which I totally respect. Don't have anything against those who feel like they should get vaccinated, and don't judge anybody for that. It's fine, and I'm glad that we can all make our individual decisions. But I thought it'd be useful to record this video from my perspective and tell you where I am. And I am doing this from a position of hopefully humility, in that I wish, or I have wished, that I could be in the camp of everybody else and just going along with the First Presidency announcement and getting the vaccine, because that's kind of the position that I've been in my entire life. My entire life has been one of, eventually coming around and following the guidance of the church, even on policies. And I do realize that this is a policy. Almost all of the time, I've been very supportive of church policies. And in this particular case, I find myself on the other side of it. And I find myself really feeling for people who have been on the other side of certain church policies in the past. And because I feel like an outsider now, kind of looking in. I feel like I'm certainly not in the mainstream, I don't think. There's probably 25% of the church, I would guess right now, that believes as I believe, and that aren't any day soon going to go and get the vaccine. And I just kind of want to share with those who are on the other side my reasons for that, my thinking. I know that there's some feeling that those who don't line up for this and don't support it and even speak out against it are apostate. So the strange thing that I've had some feedback, pretty passive feedback, little hints from let's say close acquaintances who have been hinting that by sending me messages that I need to basically man up and get the vaccine and follow the prophet. And it's been a bit of a weird thing. And the reason it's weird for me is that these people have never done this for doctrinal issues, and we all of a sudden have a policy of the church that says get vaccinated, and it's creating this rift or division in the church over a policy, and not over some new doctrine or anything like that. So whereas if I was not obeying certain commandments, I would think that maybe people would reach out to me and tell me I need to repent. Well, I've never really had that kind of experience, but on this policy, I'm getting these passive aggressive things from people going, wow, you're kind of, and they're not saying I'm apostate, but it's kind of being implied that I'm apostate for not following this. So my whole reason for this is to help you understand me a little bit better, and maybe understand that, let's just say 25% of the church that is probably in a similar position as I am. So the announcement included some wording in there that said that the vaccines are safe and effective. And we even heard that repeated in General Conference this last Saturday from Elder Renlin. He came out and stated that phrase again, safe and effective. that to me is that wording is shocking to me. I'm fine with the church having a position, that people should get vaccines. It's fine. I mean, we have church policies all the time, and there's a position the church takes. But on this particular one, they've gone a little further and said that the vaccines are safe and effective. And I've been paying very, very close attention to COVID and the vaccine rollout, and following the adverse events data that's put out by the government, that the government's collecting. They're not saying anything about it, but they're collecting the data, and you can go, for example, to OpenVAERS and see the COVID data. And so over the last 9 months or so, I've been watching as the death count has risen to a level that eclipses all other vaccines in the history of the United States, probably the history of the world. In other words, the number of deaths that we've had from this vaccine is more than all other vaccines combined over the last 30 years. This is more dangerous than all other vaccines that have been released in the last 30 years combined. So all those 30 or 40 vaccines that you give to your kids, you add up all the deaths that have happened over the last 30 years, and it doesn't even touch the number of deaths that we've had in 9 months of vaccines here in the United States. That, to me, feels not very safe. We don't even know the long-term effects. Obviously, this is an experimental vaccine. In other words, we've not had animal studies. We don't know the long-term side effects from this. Vaccines usually take years and years and years because of studies. And now the government and even the church are pushing a rollout of this as if we know that it's safe and effective, and we do not. Like I said, I've been watching this on, they put this out about on a weekly basis. I've been watching this, and it keeps going up and up and up. And now we have about 70 deaths per day entered into this system. 70 deaths a day. The previous threshold for taking a vaccine off the market has been between 25 to 50 deaths total. For example, in 1976, Swine Flu Pandemic, they had a very similar situation there where they came up with a vaccine. They pushed it out to the population. They had TV commercials, and they had celebrities that were telling you to get the vaccine. But when they got to about somewhere between 25 and 32 deaths, they shut the whole program down, 1976. And that's kind of been the thing. Once you get 25, 32, 50 deaths with the vaccine, they're going to shut it down. Only 4 out of 100, only about 4% of vaccines make it through preclinical trials. On this one, we've got a vaccine that is under emergency use authorization, has been developed very, very quickly and been pushed out. What are the chances that this vaccine has some dangerous side effects in the short term or long term? Well, from the history, we know that would probably be there's a 96% chance that it is not safe in the short or long term. Just from a history of developing vaccines, only about 4% make it through preclinical trials. So either they don't work or they're dangerous. So safe and effective, the chance of this being safe and effective just from a historical perspective is about 4%. And let's talk about this number of 16,000 deaths that we're approaching right now. 16,000 deaths. You might say, well, it's only 16,000. We're saving hundreds of thousands of lives with the vaccine. Well, are we? The question is 16,000 a number to worry about? Well, Harvard did a study. They published a white paper back in 2010 where they were looking at the vaccine adverse events system. This is a government system put out by the HHS where they collect data. Doctors are putting these events into the system. Back then in 2010, only about 1%, or it said less than 1% of adverse events are actually reported into the system. If that's the case, then these deaths is much, much higher. Let's say it's 4%. Let's say that it's gotten better over time. It's 4%. That would still be 400,000 deaths from this vaccine if what's reported is 4% of reality. Or if it's 1%, that would be 1.6 million deaths from this vaccine. So what is the truth? Well, it's something higher than 16,000 deaths. And that's way beyond the threshold of what we used to consider, way beyond the threshold of what we used to consider to be a safe vaccine. So let's talk about effective. Is this vaccine effective? Well, we already have the ability to look at some countries that did a massive rollout earlier this year of vaccines, basically mandated it for certain portions of their population. One of those countries was Israel, and they were kind of touted as being the poster child of a proper vaccine rollout, and this is the example of how the rest of the world needs to be. So how did that go? Well, in August, the New York Times came out with an article saying, well, this poster child, Israel, hasn't done as well as everybody thought, and they're actually, the number of cases and deaths is actually going up, which nobody would have supposed after a vaccine was released to the majority of the population. And so they opted to go for a third booster, and I'm sure they're going to be doing a fourth booster very soon, but has been completely ineffective according to the data. So Israel now has higher cases per million than almost any other country, and yet they are one of the highest vaccinated countries in the world. And this is not just Israel, it's also Iceland and other countries. So what do we have as far as countries like Sweden, who largely are not vaccinated, largely have ignored the masks and other warnings? What has happened with Sweden? If you compare those side by side, Sweden has not had the spikes, the post-vaccine spikes that countries like Israel have had, and the numbers per million of cases are minuscule at this part. They've kind of ignored the whole thing, ignored that they've not done the lockdowns that everybody else has, and they've come out safe. So when the first presidency message says that the only way that we're going to be able to get through this is to immunize or vaccinate a very large portion of the population, well, truth says and data says that that's not the only way that you can get through this. And Sweden says that you can get through it without these man-made experimental vaccines. So like I said, I've been following this for a very long time, and from what I can see, there is no great benefit to the vaccines, and there's a huge potential downside. So the question is, why don't you just still man up and follow the prophet? Don't you think that God will protect you? Because the prophet said to do it. And so if you just follow the prophet, don't you think God will protect you? Well, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that following the prophet in every single policy that's put out there is something necessary for salvation? Yes or no? Just say it out loud. Yes or no? Obviously, you could program a robot to obey every policy and everything that the prophet says, and that robot's not going to go to heaven. You can baptize a robot. But there was a group back in Jesus' day that was very good at following all of the commandments of the presiding high priest, and that was the or Moses especially, and that was the Pharisees. And they would make sure not to take too many steps or do things that weren't appropriate on the Sabbath. They would follow every law to the letter, and they would make sure that they were seen to be doing the things that were prescribed by the leaders of the church at the time. Jesus didn't get along very well with them. In fact, they wouldn't allow Jesus to preach in their synagogues, and he was very much. He didn't get a calling in the church back then, did he? Because he chose instead of looking at the letter of the law to choose the meaning, the true meaning of the law and the spirit of the law. And he was very much a loner. So we talk about 25% of the church being on this side. Well, Jesus was less than 1% type of loner. He was very, very, very much alone in this. So now I'm not comparing myself to Jesus at all, but I'm just saying that I think God would have us all do what we feel is right by the Spirit, rather than feeling good about checking off the box of following a policy that the prophet has. The church has gotten policies wrong in the past. They'll continue to get things wrong in the future. That doesn't make the church not true. That just makes it a organization that adopts policies that are some are good, some are better, some are best, some are not as good. So that's the nature of things. Let me talk really quick about a concept that was introduced to me earlier this year. This is something that Richard Paul Evans, I think he had a dream where this came to him, and he put it out there. It's called the 5 Kingdoms. You and every other member of the human race belong to 5 different kingdoms. You're a part of 5 different kingdoms. The first kingdom that you're a part of is a kingdom that's between you and God. So your relationship with God is the number one kingdom that you are a part of. In other words, making sure that you have the Spirit, that you are following God, that you're walking with God and doing what He would have you do as an individual is preeminent. Number 2 would be a kingdom comprising you and your family, your immediate family, and your responsibilities to them. Number 3 would be you and your extended family, your friends, those type of circles. Number 4 would be between you and the organizations that you're part of, and the church would certainly fall into this 4th kingdom. And your work would be part of that as well. Your country is part of that as well. And number 5 would be a kingdom comprising you and the rest of the world. So it's important, according to this concept, that we get these in the right order. If you get them out of order, it creates a massive imbalance in your life, and you're even open to manipulation or abuse. Can you imagine if you had a family member, extended family member, who you put their opinion or what they told you to do above what you felt was right, or what God told you to do, how that could create circumstances where they could manipulate you or abuse you. I've got lots of history to show that that's very unhealthy. Or if you put your work above your family, or if you put church in front of and above your personal responsibilities to God or your relationship with God. Let's say that your calling was first, but you never have the Spirit. Well, you got it upside down. And then another example would be, what if somebody told you that we need to be a good global citizen, which is not a bad thing, which is a good thing, but if you were told to be a good global citizen, and you put that above any other of the kingdoms that you're a part of, that's basically the concept that Marx introduced and the communists introduced is, you need to be a good global citizen first, and then you'll come somewhere down the road. And if we just put the global community first and allow them to tell us what to do, then everything will fall into place. Well, that's an upside down view of utopia, paradise, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't work well, as we've learned over lots of years of history. It would be better to work on yourself with God first, and then take that goodness to your family, to your extended family, to your work and church and your country, and kind of work outward from yourself rather than backward, not caring about what type of person you are. So there's the concept of the 5 kingdoms. So should I feel out of place by not personally agreeing with the policy of the church? It is weird, it is different, but I feel completely comfortable because the position that I've come to has been over many, many months, and much study and much observance and even prayer, trying to understand if I am deceived in this. And I'm still open to being wrong, and sometimes I really wish I was, and really wish I could hop onto that train. But at this point, this is how I feel. And I'm certainly not going to recommend a vaccine to my children that has already some history of causing miscarriages. One of the studies that was done showed that 82% of people who took the vaccine in their first and second trimesters experienced miscarriages. Well, I'm certainly, knowing that little piece of information, not going to encourage my daughters to do that. There's also history of infertility with a lot of the vaccines, like the HPV vaccine, which has been very heavily pushed on our teenage children, has a history of infertility. So, and there's lots of other vaccines out there that seem to show the same thing. So, knowing what I know, my first responsibility is to myself, to my family, and going outward from there. So, although it's uncomfortable, because I have always wanted to be a good, upstanding member of the church, and I've always wanted to support the leaders of the church in pretty much everything that they put out there. On this particular one, I'm going to take a hard pass on it. Do I think if I did get the vaccine at this point that God would protect me from any potential side effects of the vaccine? From getting a blood clot, or from heart attack, or myocarditis, or thrombosis, or any of the other effects that we've seen that a lot of people have in reports. I do not believe that history says that God protects people if they don't use their best judgment. So I don't think that I think that the nature of this world is God allows bad people to do bad things, and He allows the laws of nature to prevail most of the time, and He allows natural consequences. And it seems that one of the natural consequences of this vaccine, or lots of natural consequences of this vaccine, are that it harms people. So, knowing what I know, if I was to take the vaccine, I do not believe that God would protect me or my children or my family from the adverse long-term consequences that might come up in the future. So Anyway, I wanted to put this out here for anyone to understand my position. Again, I don't want to judge anybody else's position. This is what I've come to know. And I know that we all kind of live in our own little versions of reality. And it will take some time to figure out what is 100% accurate and what's not. It's kind of an interesting life where God gives us agency and the ability to take two different choices, both which seem good, and decide which is better for us and our family. And it's, that's part of the blessing of agency and the blessing of being blessed with the prayer and the gift of the Spirit and the ability to judge for ourselves, is to know and to understand that God values our ability to judge, and He lets us learn over time how to be wise. So we'll find out. I hope that in the church we can all allow for differences of opinion on many different subjects, and that won't cause a rift between people or negative judgment, because we're all kind of navigating together as best we can. I really believe that for the most part people are doing the best with the information that they have. So I will give that to everybody out there. So thanks for listening. I'd appreciate your feedback in the comments, and I am interested in knowing other people's perspective, because certainly I don't claim to know everything. So